Why, hello there. You seem to have caught me wondering, what if North and South Korea were engaged in active conflict once more? Now, technically, they are still at war, as there's been no official peace treaty signed, and the countries are not planning to sign one. As one country, though I won't specify, does not really want to sign a peace treaty. Because it's what keeps their propaganda alive. But I'm not gonna point fingers or anything. Now, with some very, very, very thinly veiled, not threats, but like thinly veiled finger pointing, I guess. I don't know. Let's get into this scenario. So, who's gonna start this war? Well, yeah, it's North Korea. Kim Jong Un, old Kimmy, doesn't like the existence of South Korea. And so he's going to do his best to stop it. So artillery barrages rain over Seoul. Mass amounts of North Korean troops cross the border and take up a large swath of South Korean land as they make an encircling movement over Seoul. But then, the South Korean military organizes, fifth strongest military power in the world and all that, and pushes North Korea out of the country. Then they begin to push into North Korea, taking this area to protect Seoul from artillery and to eventually push up and take Pyongyang, which is what they will do. They'll make a spearhead up here, not that large, but go for a encircling movement here, cutting off these unorganized North Korean troops. Pyongyang is captured, these guys are forced to surrender, and North Korea is basically pushed back to where it was in the First Korean War. Now, China, in all realism, might just leave it, might just let North Korea die and have its message to be one against hubris of attacking a stronger country. But I don't think China would like to let a Western ally be on its border. Besides India, but India is friendly with Russia, so because it buys all its oil from there. So that doesn't really count. I guess Vietnam, but it's teeny, it's not going to do very much. Anyway, so we see China entering this conflict in order to basically have a buffer state with South Korea. Basically, not save North Korea, but because they don't want South Korea to be on their border. In all realism, I'd assume, in reality, China would probably either just invade North Korea and probably get a bit of land, set up a buffer state, and all that. Or they just let North Korea die. But what do you think this channel is about? Realism? Nah, that'd be very boring. So we're gonna watch China make the silly decision of joining this conflict. Now, I'm gonna say something that won't make much sense, but AUKUS is gonna activate. If you know what AUKUS is, it's a pact between the UK, America, and Australia. AU stands for Australia, UK stands for the United Kingdom, and then the US at the end stands for the United States. Now, this might not make much sense because none of the countries I named were South Korea. But the reason this defensive pact will activate is two countries that are invited to join and probably would like to join are Japan and South Korea. These are both good allies of the West and America, and so it is definitely within the realm of possibility that these countries would join in on a conflict against China. Other countries that will join that are not in this alliance is going to be the Philippines, a country that a country that does not like China in the slightest, and would love any chance. That's the wrong color. Sorry, and would love any chance to rid them from the map. Now, Taiwan would love to join, but they decide they do not want to lose their country, so they're going to stay out of this conflict, though they will be supporting the West. Vietnam also would like to join this conflict, but don't really want to get steamrolled, so they won't. And finally, China sees the writing on the wall and begins to call on some allies. Those allies being Pakistan, Iran, Tajikistan, because I learned that country's name. I think it's Tajikistan or Tajikistan. Tajikistan. Anyway, Myanmar will join. Sri Lanka will probably stay neutral as they have no reason to joining. Don't even know why I mentioned them. And this will be China's team. Now, currently power-wise, China's screwed. Pakistan top 10, Iran 13th, but this is 6-5. You're both not in the top 10 because Australia, what are you doing, mate? So weak. And number 1. Oh yeah, and 7 and 6. And I'm back. Sorry, I had to go there for a second. You may have noticed, you might not have. Anyway, after quickly rewatching the footage, I realized the last part is extremely confusing. What I was trying to say is, strongest country in the world, 6th strongest country in the world, 5th strongest country in the world. That would be 7th, and Philippines and Australia are so bad they're not even on the list. Get better, guys. This is just disappointing. Anyway, this will be the teams for now. I could also bring France into countries I could bring into the war. France could join. Like, if you want to stretch, Italy maybe. As I already said, Taiwan and Vietnam. But I can't, maybe Poland or Germany, but I can't really see anyone else really wanting or caring enough to join this war. Except for a few countries. In one, game lagged for not game, but it lagged for a second. In this specific region, those countries being Turkey, Israel, not Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, and let me just backtrack a second. Because Israel and Turkey are in this war, now we have Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon joining this conflict. There we go. Saudi Arabia will join, Oman will join, Yemen will join, and because one person declared a war in the Middle East, now everyone's at war with everyone. Anyway, that's enough picking teams. Let's actually get into the scenario. We're going to begin in the place where this all started, which is called Korea. I didn't forget the name there. So, we see Chinese forces steamrolling back down. Pincer head movement recaptures Pyongyang. That's not a pincer. But, like, a Chinese push recaptures Pyongyang and pushes South Korean forces off the west coast of North Korea, and sufficiently pushes them back to the DMZ zone, and an invasion of South Korea begins. But as more Japanese forces begin to arrive, China is stalemated. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, everything, like, I just made a video in the Middle East, it's performing pretty well, which is surprising, because people don't really like talking about the Middle East, because of, something that's happening right here. No one on YouTube likes their opinion about, likes picking opinions about it, because people judge. But anyway, enough ranting about things that don't matter. Let's do an invasion of Yemen. See, Yemen, it's screwed. Not a strong country, very unstable, and I think Hezbollah's up here, Houthis down here. Wait. Oh my, I forgot. Hamas, Houthi, Hezbollah. I think Houthi would be the only threat that Saudi Arabia and Oman would come up against in their invasion of Yemen. And if you're wondering who Houthi, Hamas, and Hezbollah are, they're all terrorist groups funded by Iran. Hezbollah's in Lebanon, Hamas is in Gaza, and Houthi is in here. Houthi is important because it disrupts trade routes. Hamas is important because they're Russia's Like, they're not. What am I even saying anymore? Because they're currently engaged in active conflict, and Hezbollah is important because they're about to be currently engaged in active conflict if they keep fighting Israel. So, Yemen surrenders. Is this too fast? I doubt it. Yemen's not a very powerful country. We see Israel finally being able to do what am I? Sorry. Israel's going to do what it's always wanted to do and do an invasion of all of its neighbors except for Israel, because I don't know why I drew that. I clicked, I guess. We see Saudi Arabia make a small invasion into Iraq, though most of its forces are situated down in Yemen. Turkey does a full invasion of Syria and Iraq, though no movement is made on this border because of the mountains. We see a Turkish battalion and an Israeli battalion meet up here, cutting off these forces and forcing them to surrender. Jordan falls, and Lebanon is cut off from the rest of the Middle East. Is this too fast? Like, realistically, no. You see, Pakistan. It's on China's team, but it doesn't know where to send its troops. So it's sending, because they weren't informed that all these countries were going to join the war. So it just thought, oh yeah, one front, Korea. So most of its forces are going all the way to Korea. But then this happens, and Pakistan's forces are now can't get to here very quickly. So their forces are moving all the way from where they thought they were going, which is in China, to the Middle East. So they happen to go from, like, let's say they got to around here when everything went to hell in the Middle East. So now they happen to go all the way back through here. This is very mountainous. This area of China is not the most stable because of human rights violations. Sorry, I had a bit of cough there by the Chinese government. That was very, very horrible for you guys to hear. I severely apologize. So it's basically just the three most powerful countries in the Middle East. Yes, another one of those powerful countries, which is Iran. And don't forget that these countries are being backed by the UK. America's probably sending, like, not very much, but a few troops, possibly. And I can see that countries in NATO would be funding them, like France, Italy, maybe even Egypt, not Greece, maybe Germany, are also funding these rebels. So, funding these groups. So, enough explaining, more killing. Syria's wiped out, and Iran's forces finally mobilize and organize to hold a front in Iraq. And the blue team offensive is slowed, but a force still is able to take Baghdad. I think Baghdad's around there. Probably went too far, but that's fine. So, meanwhile, on the South Korean border, more Chinese forces are sent, and the push continues, and eventually Seoul is encircled, and the forces push down to reach Busan, which is around there, I think. I don't know. Quickly, in real life they wouldn't fall this quickly, but like say 70% of China's military is being sent to South Korea, and I don't know, that's a lot of troops. So we see South Korea holding on here, but they lose the coast here. So saying here too much, but they lose this coast, meaning their only hideouts are now in Seoul and Busan. The Busan hideout is not completely crushed, but they lose ground in Busan, which I think is around there, correct me if I'm wrong, and Seoul is incredibly close to falling. But, I'm accidentally paralleling this. This isn't planned or anything. But now the Americans are here, and once the Americans arrive, they don't stop arriving. That's meant to be a parody of, the oversimplified thing in the Pig War, where he makes a joke once the Americans come and they don't stop coming. That sounded really weird. Never mind. What I meant to say is the Americans are here and they're pushing the Chinese back. A large force is able to split the Chinese armies in two and recapture Seoul, though this is at a loss of the Busan front. Now these guys, quickly, sea borders, China's sea border, China's holding on to this, China's holding on to here, and its coast. That's it. Everything else is owned, all other sea is owned by the blue team. Just keeping that in mind. So they are able to supply here. It's not like completely cut off. The recapturing of the connection of Seoul comes at a cost of pushbacks on either front, and this is quite tedious. So the Americans devised a plan of kicking them out of here before focusing on the northern front. So they do a large sweeping offensive to here to kick the Chinese out of the country, but are unable to finish it and only broaden the front line. Sorry, wait. No, that's not right. And they only just push them down to this teeny weeny corner. This comes at a cost as Chinese forces begin to push down, and Seoul is split in and Seoul is attacked. I don't know. That may be half. I might even missed where Seoul was. I don't know. I'm not I apologize. I'm not a South Korean geography expert. I know the rough approximation of its cities. But now they're locked. Eventually, we see this force getting pushed out. We see the Americans losing more land and eventually loss of Seoul, as most of their forces are in the south. But eventually they are stalemated and Chinese forces stalemated and are beginning to be pushed back. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Pakistani forces arrive on the front and are successful in their efforts to retake Baghdad, though this comes at a cost in the northern and southern fronts, as they lose more land, and blue forces are now reaching the more vulnerable borders of Iran. By now, Pakistan's not looking too great, but they decide not to notepad the war, as this would make for a bad video. Don't know why I went silent there. We see... What am I saying? We see a Chinese invasion... What am I even saying? Sorry. We see a successful red team pushback on this front, allowing for better defensive positioning. Meanwhile, on the Korean front, there is a large pushback of red troops as Seoul is liberated. This is a large boost for South Korean morale, and their country, and they begin to make the second invasion of North Korea. Though Chinese forces are still present in South Korea. Oh god, what? Sorry about all these breaks, I'm just tired, I think. That's why. I don't know, that's an excuse. So China is not looking good in this war. They could probably surrender now, and they'd get a better deal out of it. But that would mean admitting defeat to the Americans, and a huge propaganda loss for their people. So instead, they have a plan. And this is a plan known as Get Russia Involved, meaning we have huge allies, more allies, maybe even get Laos, Cambodia, and get loads of Eastern allies and completely destroy any semblance of the West left. And this plan? Well, it doesn't go too well, because Russia ends up denying joining, as they're already in war with one country, and that's teeny weeny militarily compared to the other countries in this war, and they're already losing that, so they end up denying. But Laos and Cambodia end up joining, which really heavily helped their military campaign in Laos and Cambodia. Very powerful, as we all know. We see Mongolia decide to stay neutral. Don't even know why I mentioned them. We see Central Asia be pressured into joining economically. You join, Azerbaijan joins, Georgia joins, And yeah, other than that, there has been no other major combatants, or technically none of these countries are really major, so no other combatants join, despite China's best efforts. So, Iranian forces, who have been preparing for this, do a large invasion of Azerbaijan, wiping out the country, and attempt to invade Georgia, but end up don't. Russia decides that now is this time for its second great invasion of a country, and invades Georgia. Not like on the side of the red team, but they just want land. I just think this is what would happen. And Georgia's wiped off the map. Turkey's like, what the hell, Russia? And Russia's like, yeah, sure, try and fight me. And then NATO's like, do you want that? And Russia decides to back off, though they don't renounce land claims or move their troops off. Red team forces are continuously pushed back, and Baghdad is retaken. We see... What do we see? We see Iraq being completely destroyed. Iraq now no longer exists, and Western forces begin to push into Iran. Chinese forces are now... China is now recruiting its people en masse and are able to fully push the Westerners out of North Korea and push a little bit down into South Korea, but eventually they're stalemated, and so China makes a realization. If they want to get away with this war with land, they need to do something. What are their options? Invade the Philippines, a slow and brutal process that would eventually just not work. Invade Japan, practically impossible. So they can either continue to attempt... They can either try to do a second invasion of South Korea, and it did pretty well the last time, but that was without huge American forces there, and now there are huge American forces there. We can also see... So they have basically got one option left, and that is a giant campaign in the Middle East. So, that is exactly what they're going to do. They're recruiting their people by mass, and now, by mass, they are moving to the Middle East. And this is going to have a giant effect on the war. First, we see South Korean, American, and Japanese forces successfully take back South Korea, and an invasion into North Korea is mounted, though progress is slow. But suddenly, progress is a lot easier, Pyongyang is captured, and they're pushed back to here. Here is quite and when I mean here, I mean this border. This border is quite mountainous, and extremely difficult to traverse, so they are forced into stalemate as they're fighting Chinese who are using guerrilla warfare tactics, which slows down the Westerners' progress quite a lot. But they're wondering, where are the Chinese forces going? And soon they quickly find out. The Iranian parts that were occupied is liberated, Spearhead retakes Baghdad, and large pushbacks on the Iraqi front begin. A landing is made in Oman, and the country is swiftly taken. Saudi Arabia is surprised by this, and so they lose a bit of land from this, but after some quick reorganization of the military that was holding down Yemen, they are able to stalemate the Middle Eastern, Chinese, and Pakistani troops. A majority of Iraq is liberated, and Chinese and Red Team forces are now at the Turkish border and begin to do push in slightly, though not by much. Red Team forces have reached the border of Syria, and they begin to spearhead so that they can cut off Turkey from the rest of the Blue Team and reach the Mediterranean Sea. How are they doing this? Well, most of Pakistan's forces are there. Chinese forces are recruiting en masse, and all those forces are being sent here, while the professional military is attempting to subdue the blue countries in the Middle East. Now, China's plan is just to hold out here, capitulate enough blue team countries here, possibly like capitulate Oman, maybe go for Israel or Saudi Arabia. Wait, which is weaker, Israel or Saudi Arabia? I think Saudi Arabia, though I would not be surprised if Israel's weaker. Let me just quickly search up global firepower. Anyway, while this happens, the co-host of the channel who made the what's it called? The top 10 military powers by manpower is going to post his first video today. He's going to post his first video. He says he tells me that he's going to post his first video today, but he might not. Anyway, so hopefully that he will. Anyway, global firepower is not really working. So be excited for that. Damn it, why are you not? Never mind, sorry. Giant distraction when nothing happened, and why are there random lines in the Middle East? Okay, cool. Anyway, so I just made you wait for nothing. But I'm just going to say Israel's weaker, because I think it is. It's also smaller. So China's plan, capitulate Oman, capitulate Israel, deal some damage to Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and then call for peace treaty and see what land they can get out of it. But because most of their forces are here, this comes at a loss in the North Korean front, where they're pushed back to their border and small invasions into Manchuria begin. We see the red team spearhead completed, and Turkey has now Turkey is cut off from its allies. A Turkish counteroffensive to cut off the spearhead is attempted, but in the end fails, and the Turkish forces are pushed back. We see Syria being liberated in heavy air quotes. Blue team forces are being continuously squished down in Iraq and Syria, as a majority of both Pakistan and Chinese forces are there. So Oman completely is now dead, and Yemen is like, yeah man, about this. Yeah, that joke was bad. Deal with it. Houthi rebels rise up in Yemen. They take over this area, and they begin to push up, connecting with Chinese forces, and Saudi Arabia is pushed back to its borders. The front is broadened over here as Chinese forces begin to push into Saudi Arabia, who in the end just basically gave up defending Yemen and Oman, just instead focused on holding its borders. We see a small Chinese invasion into. We see Kuwait just like randomly getting taken over, so they have better border and easier transport routes. Though in the end, this gets them nowhere, and I mainly did that because it looked a lot better on the map. That's my reasoning. Anyway, we see Lebanon being freed and an invasion into northern Israel happening. Hamas is extremely pleased with this. What else? Oh yeah, Manchuria is being invaded by the Japanese for a second time. Though this time, they're not committing atrocities. I think. They begin to push around the coast as they want to take Beijing, but eventually, with the Chinese population posing more resistance than the Chinese military itself, they are pushed back and forced to hold a defensive position here until more troops, ammunition, and tanks arrive from America and England. Because England's in this conflict, if you forgot. By now, it seems pretty clear that the blue team is going to win, as an invasion of China has been mounted, so more countries join in to try and get something out of this. These countries are France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Poland, like a lot of heavy-leaning Western countries that didn't want to get involved because its population wouldn't be very happy with it. But now that they basically won not basically won, they're losing heavily in the Middle East, but there's good reason for that, and Chinese forces are quickly being expended, and Americans just went to them and said, hey, look at these numbers. There's so many dead Chinese. Eventually, they're going to run out of tanks, troops, and aircraft. And they're like, if we win, we can tell our population, oh, I won against China. And then they'll re-elect us. And so they all join. Sorry about that. So yeah, basically giant PR victory for these people. So despite all these countries joining, northern Israel falls, Jordan begins to be liberated, and Saudi Arabia is almost completely pushed back to their borders, with them only holding a little bit here, a little bit of Jordan there, which is to keep their connection with Israel, so that maybe they could share military or something. Meanwhile, Turkey decides that they don't want Iranian forces in them, and they do a large and very successful counterstrike. But now, all of these forces are arriving in the Middle East, and China is in for a hard time. So, now European forces push in. Turkey is liberated completely. They push around Syria and Iraq. Still no progress on this front. This country falls. The Red Sea occupied area of Georgia falls, and Azerbaijan is beginning to be liberated. Lebanon and northern Israel have a lot of forces in there, so they decide to go around it, and they message Saudi Arabia, and they're like, can you push up? Then we can cut off the Chinese forces here, and they heavily turn the tide of the war, and they're like, yeah, sure, just please save us afterwards. And so they do. The spearheads meet up. Chinese forces are now beginning, and Chinese forces here begin to panic. China's like, don't worry, guys, we'll liberate you, as they decide to organize a mass retreat. Well, not a mass retreat out of the Middle East. That would be failure. And we all know, Chinese aren't failure. Chinese people aren't failures. That's what Stephen He taught us. But instead, a mass invasion of Saudi Arabia, so that they can call for a quick peace treaty and maybe get away with everything. So, I'm just going to say this is the most inaccurate video I've ever done, but oh well. So, mass invasion of Saudi Arabia begins, and the country is unprepared for it. Chinese forces move up and begin to move around the coast. Same here, and now Saudi Arabia is cut off from this sea, because I don't know its name. We see Chinese forces get heavily pushed back in Iraq, falling back to this defensive line. The forces in northern Israel and Lebanon are now not in Lebanon. Azerbaijan is liberated, and a small invasion into Iran begins. Saudi Arabia is continuously crushed down to size, and the Line project, which was here, has decided to be scrapped because of carpet bombing that China's been doing. So yeah, there are definitely war crimes in this war. China's gone full war crime mode. But what are you going to do in second most powerful military, second most powerful economy? What are you going to do to it? A small Iranian pushback works, while northern Israel is finally recaptured, and China just suffered a big loss to its troop numbers. We see eventually the two fronts meeting up and pushing into this large desert region, which eventually capitulates to the red team. And now, I don't know where Saudi Arabia's capital is. I apologize. Probably should set it up beforehand. So we see basically the complete capitulation of Saudi Arabia, and now China calls for a peace treaty. So, before they do, there's been some progress on the Manchuria front that I just haven't drawn in because I've been focusing on the Middle Eastern front. So we're just going to draw that in. You've expanded down there. Probably a spearhead up here, making this area surrender, which could be done so much faster if I just filled it in, but I didn't because I'm stupid. But now I'm about to. Whee! And that's about as far as the West is going to get. I mean, it's China. It's so heavily populated, then it's going to struggle. In the last minute, we see countries like Vietnam join this war, looking to get some land. So they do a small invasion of their neighbors. Taiwan will join. because they want any excuse to fight China, and maybe they'll get something from it. But anyway, now with this peace treaty, I'll draw that up, and then you guys get to see another one of Ben's famous horrible peace treaties. Anyway, I'll see you then. So, first let's start in the Middle East, as that's where most of the border changes have been made. Yemen is basically nothing, and Saudi Arabia and Oman are now big. Like, Oman, you can be... I could have made Oman the new Chile. That would have been pretty funny. Like, blocking Saudi Arabia from the Indian Ocean. I mean, technically it is still. Is this the Indian Ocean? This ocean. Blocking it from this ocean. But technically it'd be blocked anyway unless it annexes lands. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get back on topic. Israel is now very big, with it annexing Lebanon, Jordan, and a bit of Syria. Talking about Syria, both it and Iraq are no longer countries, as so much land has been taken from them by Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey that they have combined into one strange country. Looks okay though. Georgia, Azerbaijan, and the other country, I'll never learn that country's name, are no more, and they are all now just either Turkey, Russia, or Iran. It's kind of sad because all these countries are good. Well, actually, never mind. Forget what I said. I did not say nothing. Iran has now got a weird horn type thing, because it annexed Azerbaijan, the other country, and a bit of Georgia. Technically Iran lost the war, but it got away with land. So it's like the Bulgaria of this conflict. Anyway, back in the place that this all started, we see South Korea get most of North Korea, though a Chinese buffer state. Though China has established a buffer state up here. That's why it's colored in light red, just to show that it's a Chinese buffer state. Meanwhile, despite entering the war like at the last minute, Vietnam has gotten a bit of Laos and a bit of Cambodia. I'm sure America just did that because there's no reason not to give them these lands. They're probably a security concern as is. So it's probably just like easier just to give them to Vietnam, who's pretty good Western ally. Anyway, that will be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day.